Lowe's has the Labor Day deals you need to give your home a new look. Buy one, get one free select interior paint via Visa gift card rebate. Then, add the final touch with 2 for $8 on select 2.5 or 3-quart mums. Refresh your home and save big while doing it. Lowe's, we help, you save. Valid through 9/3. Mums offer in-store only. Selection varies by location. While supplies last. More terms and restrictions apply. See Lowes.com/rebates for details.
This episode is being re-released as it was originally released on October 14th, 2023.
He admitted that all the money I was sending for him was to go to strip clubs and go and drink, and how stupid I am, and now try to run home to mommy. Just a lot of that, right? And then again, well, I should be happy to be with him because I'm a dirty Indian and nobody's gonna want me.
Hello, welcome to another episode of Bunny Hugs and Mental Health Podcast, free safe space for people to share and learn from others' experiences with mental health and addictions. I'm Todd Rennebaum, suicide attempt survivor and a recovering substance abuser. Got another fantastic episode for you this week. This week I'm speaking with Giselle Craig, and she has an incredibly harrowing story of abuse from her ex-husband. I'm not going to tell you how it ends. It's very tragic and it's awful, but she's in a good place today, and she's going to talk about how she got there and how she was able to get away from all the abuse and stuff. So that's pretty incredible. Giselle is telling her story because she's hoping to inspire others and to let others know that it is possible to escape such situations and that recovery is possible. Next week, I'm speaking with Nick Thompson. He is a podcaster, but he also was on the reality show on Netflix, Love is Blind. He was on season 2. His podcast is called Eyes Wide Open, and I'll tell you more about all that next week. This episode and next week's episode are sponsored by Co-op. There's going to be some contests coming up on the Instagram account and Facebook accounts. You can follow me at Bunny Hugs Podcast on Instagram, Bunny Hugs and Mental Health on Facebook. There's going to be contests on there to win $25, $50, maybe even $100 gift cards from Co-op. So you don't want to miss that. Anyway, without further ado, I give you Giselle Craig.
I grew up in a northern community in small town Saskatchewan, called Green Lake, Saskatchewan. So it was a Métis community. So very small town. A lot of us are spread out. Like I lived on a farm. I lived about 3-4 miles away from town. And then my parents, we were dog mushers and did
What?
that. Yeah. So we did race dogs. So we sometimes would have up to like 40 dogs at a time. And then I also played in a band. I played in a country band. My dad started us playing music at the age of 5 years old. And then at 12 years old, I traveled all over Saskatchewan, me, my sister and brother, and a drummer and all that. And we would go traveling and play in bars.
What was the name of your band?
Oh, geez. We started off when we were very little. It was Angeline and the Ghostbusters because we were so young. Then it was Angeline and the TTR band, and then just the TTR band when my sister left.
So that's, from growing up in a very northern small town, you got some pretty cool life experience there.
Yep. Where we grew up, my parents actually built the house when we were young, all of that. And so I actually, up until I was 17, we lived there, and like we didn't have no running water. We didn't get a phone till I was 15, 16 years old. So
what year are we talking? 90s?
Early 90s.
And so you're 12 years old and you're traveling around in a band playing in bars. You must have seen some weird stuff at 12-year-old that a lot of 12-year-olds don't see.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. Like fights and, but people were pretty good because we were a young band. So but during our breaks, because we were not all old enough, we'd have to leave this. So we'd come on stage, go play. Break time, we'd have to leave and go and sit in their rooms. They'd kind of offer all of that. And then because I was very poor growing up, one of the things we look forward to was the free pop.
Yeah.
we got to get all the free pop we want because we never had pop at home. So that was our enjoyment.
And you had a fairly decent home life?
It was rough. my dad, he grew up in foster care, all that. So he was extremely strict. So, weren't allowed to, I wasn't allowed to wear makeup till I was 15 years old. At 16, I was allowed to date, but they had to get my parents' permission. We didn't really do much, like we weren't allowed to have much friends over. We weren't allowed to because the community we grew up in was quite rough. So my parents tried to keep us away from that. But, my sister was the first one. She ran away at 16 and then moved in with her boyfriend, all of that. And then kind of got pregnant, 19, moved back home. I ran away at 16, kind of did the same thing just because of such strict upbringing, right? Couldn't be a kid, right? Like, because our life was dogs and music and working on the farm. Like, we had a big garden, stuff like that. So, and then the last was my brother ran away at 16. And then we packed up that year, and my dad asked him to come back, and we moved to Prince Albert after that, which is a city, Saskatchewan still, but it was just trying to get us out of that rough lifestyle that we were living. And our way of disciplining back then was lickings and, sometimes, punch in the gut, right? A smack in the face. Like, it was harsh, right? Like, and then he just sat us all down, apologized to all of us, promised to never lay a finger on us again. And he never did after that. He ended up becoming a softie from being so extremely strict to feeling bad for what he had done, all of that.
Was your mother around?
Yes, yeah. She worked a lot. My mom actually was our manager of our band, but she did a lot of the working. My dad would work the summer and all that, but then he'd get laid off every winter. And then so he'd be the one that would get up with us for school, things like that. And he always kind of made us a breakfast, things like that. And, tried to pack a lunch, tried to be there for us kids best he could and all of that. And my mom she was always working, and she would, like, her job entailed her having to go do a bunch of courses out of town, all of that. So, but when it came to the music side, my mom was the one that took us to all the gigs. She drove us. She was an extremely hard worker.
And so the community, you said it was pretty rough. And was it like a lot of people were Métis Indigenous and had generational trauma? And like you said, your dad was in a foster home. I'm assuming there's a lot of other families that had that kind of turmoil, I guess.
I'm going to assume like that, and just a mixture of, like, there wasn't much work there, right? Like, it's not like it's always tough to find jobs, and kids, having kids at 13 years old. I remember one of my good friends, as young as 13, having children, right? Like, and just, a lot of drugs, like, so back then it wasn't quite as bad, the drug, but now it's quite bad, right? Like, and it wasn't really natives around there. It was all Métis, and then some whites, right? Like, it was just a different lifestyle. It was similar to a reservation-like life, I guess you could say.
Did you graduate high school?
No.
No. Okay. So when you, at 19 years old, when you met your boyfriend, were you working at the time? You were living in Prince Albert?
No, but I had left Prince Albert because because I was living there with family, all of that. And my sister had a kid, all that. And my parents were I wasn't allowed to do anything, much still like that, like, unless I brought my nephew everywhere. And I was just, I was 19 years old. I wanted to live life. And I didn't want my parents to tell me what to do. So I moved away 5 hours away to a small town called Stalking. And I lived with some friends that I had met in Prince Albert, a really good friend of mine, Georgina, and her husband at the time. And I stayed with her and her 3 kids. And I was looking for work. Like, when I first met my ex-husband, I wasn't working until a little bit after I got a job working at the bar there in the small town in Stockholm.
And was it love at first sight?
Yeah, it was. It was one of those, like, when I first met him, I thought, oh my God, he's so hot. He's so, like, I was a drinker back then too. So we were drinking, and it was at a bar again. And, and he kind of drank with us. And then he came back to my friend's house, partied with us all night. And I mean, he put toothpaste on my eyebrows, and when I passed out at one point, and I mean, we all laughed about it after, right? But I'm like, but it was again, when I saw him again, like maybe a couple weeks ago, but I liked him. I was like one of those, I thought he was nice and all that. And I met him again, like I would say 2 weeks, maybe a month after that. And then we kind of I kind of clinged on to him, right? And he kind of liked it, right? And yeah, and we were pretty much serious right from the start.
What was his growing up like?
He had a good lifestyle. His parents had money. They had like he played hockey. He played in all the sports, hockey, baseball, and I'm not sure what other sports. Those are the two main ones I remember. Just yeah, he did a lot of traveling. Like from my understanding, his parents were quite strict. Like his dad kind of pushed him into the sports, all that, wanted him because I guess at one point he could have gone quite far with it, but he just never did. And then he had some sisters too, and so he was the only boy. A lot of drinking. The parents were drinkers, but I mean the whole town kind of was, like a
I hear
drinking
that.
town,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. How long were you together before you started to maybe notice some red flags?
Probably the first few months we were together. We were drinking and kind of I can't really remember the whole story, right? It was just got into a fight, all of that, and then he wanted his promise ring back and kind of just playing mind games a bit there. And I was like, okay, well, went back to my friends, all of that. And I was young and first time I ever fell in love with somebody. And within a few days, me calling him and pretty much begging him to take me back and, and all of that. And then wasn't serious. Like he didn't hit me. He didn't, but it was just drinking and being, young and dumb, right? That at that point. But the first real serious time I remember him ever just first even laying a hand on me was about a year into the relationship. Yeah. Up until then, like when I first met him, he was extremely loving, extremely like, that's how I fell for him, right? Because he was like, this is my girlfriend. I love my girlfriend. She's the best thing ever happened to me. She's beautiful. She's this. And I was like, oh my God, I met this amazing guy. But just slowly things would be like, you don't need to wear your makeup. You don't need to do this, slowly things would happen, right? Like where I'd be like, hey, I stopped taking care of myself because he says, I don't have to, I don't, oh, you look good without all that. You don't need to do that, and so then you kind of start slowly, right? And
Yeah. So he was love bombing you at first and then slowly starting to control you. So it was like he sucked you in, made you feel like this guy is like, I don't know. It's almost like a cult leaders do that. Like they love bomb and make you feel so special, but then slowly start to turn the screws and have you dependent on them while they control you. And but yeah, it's a slow process. What was the incident a year in when he first laid hands on you? Was it?
He was drinking again, a whole bunch of his friends. We had a party at our house, and my sister too had been down. They'd all been drinking. I was pregnant, just newly pregnant. And I just know it got like I can't remember the whole everything. I just remember like it got quite, everybody was like being loud, being whatever. And I kind of wanted to just be done because I wasn't drinking, right? I'm pregnant. I'm 20 years old, and I'm like, I want everybody out of here, and nobody would listen. And they had started drinking early in the day. Like they were doing, they'd fill up these cooler things and they put like a bunch of berries and different alcohols. So I can't really remember what kind of drink that was, but it was a bunch of mixed drinks. And I was getting tired of all that. And then I was like, okay, everybody, and then I was like, hey, get out. And then, everybody leave. And then he was like telling me to, shut up and blah, blah. And plus I had my nephew there at the time. And that's why I wanted everything to quiet down because he was only 3 years old at the time, I would say, and wouldn't listen. So I'm like, I tried to grab the chair from him and I'm like, get off my chair then, leave, whatever. And nobody would, they're all kind of laughing at me, whatever. And then one point, then he kind of followed me into the living room and then he went in there and he had started choking me up against the patio doors and then told me he was going to, I better shut my mouth or he'll kill me. And then I was like, and I just told him, stop, and he was choking me. And then nobody jumped in though. Nobody tried to stop him, so it was just, and then I remember going and getting one of his sisters to come and help me and to try to get my nephew out of there. And because I had to go stay with a friend after that. And that was probably the first incident of putting his hands on me. Yeah.
But so you did leave that night?
Yes. Yeah.
Did you come back basically the next day or was it?
Yeah, I did the next day. Yeah.
Did he love bomb you again after that? Was he like,
yeah.
I'm so sorry. Oh, I love you. And I'm such an idiot. And
yeah. Oh yeah, yeah, and that's how it would be, right? And be like, I'll never do it again. I promise, blah blah blah. Best thing that ever happened to me, and and I was just a lot of the things that make you come back in, right, and make you forgive them. And
Did you believe him at the time? You thought,
yes, he was a good talker.
and you mentioned he was also like mentally and emotionally abusive.
Yeah, yeah, like sometimes throughout my pregnancy, sometimes he'd come in hammered through the middle because after that, we kind of put a stop to the parties in the house, and he would bring me home goodies. Pregnant, right? He'd bring all my favorite donuts, my favorite pop, all of that. He'd be like, going to go out partying, all that.
What's your
And
favorite
then
pop?
back then, because I was pregnant, the only thing I could drink was Orange Crush.
It's a
Yeah,
good
now
one.
it's Pepsi, but back
Oh,
then it was
yeah.
because Pepsi would give me acid reflux. But I was like, I liked Orange Crush and powdered donuts, and I always knew when he wanted to go out drinking because he'd come home with these. And
God, he'd butter you up with pop and donuts and go
yeah,
away.
yeah,
Huh.
yeah.
Okay.
And then what would happen is sometimes he'd come home in the middle of the night and you would just throw comments in my face. Like, I remember him one time waking up, laying on the floor, and he's like, "Get the hell up." He's like, "Go cook me a meal," because that's what dirty Indians do. And because I'm Métis, right? And then I'd be like, "Oh, shut up," whatever. And I'm like, "You're talking about dirty Indians." I'm like, "You're acting like a white Indian. Look at you on the floor," right? And he's like, "Get up and make me a meal." And he's like, "You should be proud to be with me." And a lot of that would get thrown in my face over the years, right? Like, that I should be happy to be with a white guy because nobody's ever going to want me. I'm ugly. I'm fat. This and that. And I'm a loser. And
Basically, attack your character and your physical parts, whether it was a true observation or not. But he would attack them to make you feel like he's the only one that would ever love you, and no one else could ever love you. And
yeah,
did he ever say that? No one will ever love you.
yo,
Uh,
yeah, loads of times. And he's like, no one's ever going to want you. No one's ever going to love you. And I did. And I believed it. Right. For years, I truly believed no one's ever going to want me. Right. Because I'm like, I'm ugly. I'm fat. Like, and I mean, back then I was even smaller than what I am now. And I would sit there and be like, well, I'd look in the mirror and be like, oh my God, I'm gross. Like, I'm so lucky to have somebody that actually does love me, right? 'Cause,
what did your family think of him? Was he always like best behaviors when your family was around?
oh yeah, yeah. Like
Uh,
I remember like my family would always be, he's such a nice guy. He's this, he's that. Like, and my dad, because at the time my dad was alive. When I only had my first child, I'd come back and my dad's like, all he cared about was me being happy. And he was like, this is what makes you happy. And I mean, I never told my parents the extent of how bad things were because it was many, many times I picked up and took off and went back home, and tried to leave him and tried to, whatever. But then he'd come find me and then he'd convince me to come back. But he could have anybody convincing he was the nicest guy in the world because he was good. He was good, a good talker and, good at like, I mean, I remember even when my dad passed away, he had my mom and all that because I had left him because he moved for cheating and I moved and left and all that and went
he was
stayed with
cheating. Did you
yeah,
say?
yeah.
Hmm.
One of the many times he cheated on me. And the first time I was out, first time he had was after I had our daughter and that our oldest at the time. And yeah, a young girl he didn't sleep with her, but young girl admitted they were making out at a party and all of that. So, and I mean she was really honest with me and all that. And then I was like, tried to leave then, but then he was like, people are just stirring up problems. He would kind of make it like the town was out to get him, right? Like, and that's how we kind of ended up in back to Prince Albert, because I left him, went back there, and I can't really remember another incident, but then I had heard, we were working on things, and I was whatever, but then I was told another girl admitted that they had hooked up, all of that, and because then I heard she was driving his truck, all of this, and so then I was like, hey, I'm done. Because he denied it all, right? But I mean, it's a small town, people talk, right? Everybody's business in these small towns. And so then I was like, hey, I'm done. I'm like, and then I had planned to leave and move to Regina with a friend, all that. He kind of didn't know my whole thing, what was going on. But then I lost my dad. This was the same year as the Twin Towers went down. So it's 20 some years ago. And when I lost my dad, he convinced my mom and them to come and show up to be there for me. And so I was like, And at the time, I just, I was only 22 at the time. So, you're going grieving, you just lost your dad, you're young, you're whatever, and here's this guy, whatever, that, was so nice, whatever. But then he would get drunk with my family because my mom too liked to drink, all of that. She was in, and at the time my sister was young, so she was drinking too. I was the only one that wasn't drinking. And then they'd all get drunk and he'd come up in the room and, talk smack to me and do like what he normally did, right? And just, you're a loser, you're this, blah, blah, blah. But then he would have my family believing, he had my family for a little bit there, that I was mean to him, that I was, this and that. And like, and my sister, like, I know at one time he was like, I'm going to marry your sister. My sister, like, don't buy him a ring. Don't buy her a ring. She don't deserve it. So because of how good he was talking, right? And then one night, he had come up again and started on me again. And my sister he didn't know, sitting outside the door listening and heard everything. And yeah, and she came barging in, all of that. And she was like, you shut up, you played us, you had us believing, and so he was caught, right?
Did he try gaslighting her too, or?
Oh, he tried, yeah. Yeah, he was like, yeah, he tried to deny everything and tried to play the victim role, right, and all that. But she heard everything, right? You can't take back, calling me the names, because I would tell her right prior to this. And she's like, no, he's not. He's a good man. And I was like, he's a good liar. I'm like, he can play anybody. I'm like, that's what's happening. And, and after that, though, my family opened up their eyes and, and realized that everything I was saying was true and kind of on my side over things.
And was he still physically abusive at this time
Not really at that point. He was just more mentally, like it was just, kind of again, the whatever. And then we had taken on going into some apartment buildings. So I found him a job working there as a kind of like a caretaker, and in exchange we got free rent, all of that. So we moved in there with our oldest at the time, and then it started off okay the first bit, and I had been working up north and then so I was 2 weeks in, 2 weeks off. But then at one point he had taken our oldest and went drinking, and then they had my oldest fallen off the couch. They're only 3 years old, put their arm out of their socket. He drove drunk to the hospital with them, and I got called by the hospital that either I find somebody to come get my child, or I'll lose my oldest to social services. So I had to call an auntie that lived in North Battleford, because he was about 45 minutes from there, where my uncle was living in Hafford. And then I had to go get her to go get my oldest at the time, or I would have lost my child, because I'm in the middle of nowhere working up in the bush, right? Like, and that's at the time that was the only job I could find. And
so when your daughter was in the hospital, he just left her and went drinking again?
Yeah, he got kicked out. Yeah, he got kicked out because and the cops were threatening to charge him, all of that. So he took off and got out of there. And that was kind of like one point there where I was like, after that, so when I did go out of town, I never left my kid with him. I was like, I had to switch. I switched out with my sister then. We would switch out kids because I didn't trust him. And then I ended up finding a job in Prince Albert at the time at some group homes there, and was able to start working in town and make sure I could not have my child taken away from me over this.
Ultimately, how many kids did you end up having with them?
3.
And over that period of time, did it begin to escalate more, or was it just kind of this base level of just chaos, I guess?
It escalated more because then our next ones, we had boys, and he became jealous. And my middle boy was a real mama's boy.
Became jealous of your own children?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, all through our whole marriage too, he'd be like, I'm not the dad, like it. He would always say, there was this Aubrey guy. He's like, Aubrey's my oldest, the dad to that. And he'd be like, that's not my kid. These are your kids. And I'd have a lot of that thrown in my face, and I'm a hoe and I'm a this and that. And I mean, he would, when I was pregnant with finally our third one, because he had cheated with our second son, and I forgave him again. I would leave, then go back, leave, go back. And, a lot of us breaking up lots, and a lot of, our family was brought into a lot of it too, right? Because I'd call the family, he'd call, they'd hear his side, not, but just a lot of that, right? And then again, well, I should be happy to be with him because, I'm a dirty Indian and nobody's going to want me. And, and our last one, I had left him. And because again, I found out from the caretakers in the building next door, they came to me and said, he spent the night with a woman in a hotel and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay, I'm done. And I was just newly pregnant with our third kid. And I moved in with my mom and we got a different place and all that. And I stayed with her till I was close to 8 months pregnant. And then he told me he got a job. He was gonna get out of PA. He quit his drinking. He's changed his life. Let's move to Medicine Hat. He got a job in the oil patch. And I didn't know much about the oil industry back then, right? And then I was sending him money to pay for different courses he was telling me. And I'm like, so I just assumed, right, that I'm helping him out. We're going to better our lives. And, I was working, raising the two kids I had, being pregnant and sending him money to get these courses, all that. He had found an apartment here for us, all of that. And I moved here, and which was now about 6 hours. It's close to 6 hours from Prince Albert to Medicine Hat, and to start our life all over, right? And got here and all that. And then literally within a month, he admitted that all the money I was sending for him was to go to strip clubs and go and drink, and how stupid I am. And, now try run home to mommy because I couldn't just up and pack and leave. I was in a city I didn't know, right? Like,
So
couldn't
he
just up.
purposely isolated you from your family.
Yeah, yeah.
Jesus. It's weird that a man is jealous of his own male children. We kind of started talking about that, but kind of explain what that looked like. And
Well, because my boy was such like a mama's boy. He always sat on my lap and he always held my hair, and he'd be like, "Mommy, I want to hold your hair," and he was attached to me, right? Like, and he'd be like, "Oh, he's a faggot. Oh, he's just a queer. You're raising him into be a little princess," and I'd be like, shut up, right? And then he'd be like, he's going to grow up being gay because the way he is, like, quit allowing him to be like that. And I'm like, he's a little boy, right? And I'm like, and he loves his mom, and I was like, it was just things like that, right? Like, just so much jealousy, and just because of how attached me and him were and all of that. And he didn't like being alone with him, any of that. So I was like, there's a reason why this kid doesn't like to be around you. He likes his mom, I'm like, because he can sense the negativity from you and the jealousy, right? I'm like, he used to tell me that, no, I just used him because he threw a cute batch of kids. And that's how he would word it. And I'm like, and at the end, I was, don't get me wrong, at the end, I was mean too, right? I'd be like, yeah, that's the only reason I'm with you. I'm like, you threw a cute batch of kids because I'm like, I don't like you otherwise.
well, I mean, that makes sense. I mean, if that's the environment you've been in for 10, 12 years, it's bound to come back. But was he ever abusive to the children? Like, it sounds like he was emotionally and mentally too, like calling them names right to their faces and stuff. But is he physically abusive?
He wasn't emotional, or he wasn't physically, like, I mean, he would give them spankings, all of that, right? But more the breaking point was where I up and knew I had to leave, is he got very sexually inappropriate with our oldest. They were outside, them and their best friend at the time, and they were only 9 or 10. I can't remember. And then he had asked them if they had boobs, and he's like, can I see them? And then asked if they had hair growing, and he's like, show me. And my kid and their friend come in, and they were both like very upset, right? They're like, Dad's out there drunk, and he's trying to get it, and they're telling, and I'm like, oh my God. And they're like, so that's when I was like, I gotta go. I gotta get out of here. I gotta leave. I'm like, this is, now I was just, my oldest was worried that, they were going to get, but, to the extent of what he would have done, I don't know. Right. But I'm like, to get sexually inappropriate with your child was pretty bad. That was.
You did end up taking the kids and leaving at that point then?
Took a bit, because it took me about a year to try to leave him. And because I had so much debt from when we moved here. I had given him all my cards, given him, and he had maxed them all out, right? And I knew when I left, he always told me if I ever leave, he's like, I'll go live with my parents and you'll never get a penny from me. So I always knew if I left, I'd have to do it on my own. So, and I think that's what kind of, why he kind of went over, because I think he started the last year, he started realizing like, I stopped being in love with him. I hated him. Like I just couldn't even handle him. Right. I'm like, because sometimes he would come in, he would shove me around. Like he had a friend over once and he tried to punch me right in front of his friend. And I ducked and got out of there, all that. But his friend didn't even stop him at the time either. Right. Like he'd come home drunk in the middle of the night and wake me up and he'd be like, and he'd be like, you whore, you said somebody's name in your sleep. And I was like, and it was weird stuff, right? I was like, I'm asleep. I got to work tomorrow, right? Like, and I was like, so I had claimed bankruptcy, but it took a bit, so I was trying to do all of that. I was trying to figure out how I'm going to afford to get my own place, how to get everything sorted with 3 children, right? 3 young kids to boot. And I had ran a daycare and I shut the daycare down because I knew I needed to get a different job because I was running it out of our house. And so then I went and found a job at another group home in town, got the daytime hours, all of that, and went and worked at a bar too at some point to help us out because, the oil patch at that time was slow too. So, but just slowly I was trying to get out.
Was there any kind of like women's shelters or women's services that you could benefit from? Or
one of the things is I needed to have, they said I needed to have proof that he assaulted me in order to, they would help you with your first month's rent and help you kind of leave, right? So rent and then so much for damage. And I found that my last breaking point was I actually went to a friend's and we were drinking there and I told myself, or whatever, and I just didn't care anymore. I said, if you don't shut your mouth here, I'm like, I'm done. I'm like, I can't even handle the sight of you anyways. And he had been drinking and like I said, when he was drinking, he was very sexually inappropriate just to women, just anybody in general, right? He just had a disgusting mouth. And he had been lying on the floor and it was one of my best friends at work. I had met through work. It was him and his girlfriend's place. And I didn't know his girlfriend at the time too well, but I knew him very well. And so we're all playing poker or whatever. And then he lies on the floor and then she's like, oh my God, my dog's in heat and that. And she's like, sorry about that. And then the dog kind of walks past him while he's laying on the floor. And he looks at my friend's girlfriend. He's like, your dog wants me to lick the P word, right? And I'm like, I was done. I was like, she got up, her face is red, right? Because she didn't know him, any of that, grabs her dog, goes and hides it, right? And then I was like, that's it. I'm like, you're disgusting. I'm like, get the hell out of here.
Today's episode of Bunny Hugs and Mental Health is brought to you by Co-op. I've been a member of my local co-op, Sherwood Co-op, for, about 25 years, I think. My co-op is one of more than 150 local independent cooperative associations in more than 600 communities across Western Canada. Co-op is a different kind of business. It's not just a gas bar or a grocery store, although co-op is those things too. At its core, co-op is a group of people working together to help their neighbors and build their community. Co-op members are owners and success is shared with everyone. Your co-op doesn't benefit one person or one corporation. Your co-op was built for everyone. Your co-op was built for your community. Learn more about co-op and find a location near you at coop.crs. One thing I've learned through my experience with mental health and addictions is you never know what you need to hear until you hear it. Make sure to rate and review on Apple and to tell as many people as you can about the podcast so others can hear something they need to hear from one of my guests. After all, this is a free mental health service, which is a rare thing, so why not share with as many people as you can?
Lowe's has the Labor Day deals you need to give your home a new look. Buy one, get one free select interior paint via Visa gift card rebate. Then, add the final touch with 2 for $8 on select 2.5 or 3-quart mums. Refresh your home and save big while doing it. Lowe's, we help, you save. Valid through 9/3. Mums offer in-store only. Selection varies by location. While supplies last. More terms and restrictions apply. See Lowes.com/rebates for details.
We were just kind of fighting back and forth, all of that. And he's like calling me names in front of everybody again, his thing he does, right? And tell me I'm no good for nothing and all of this and that. And I'm like, I'm done. I'm like, I am done. And then I end up, went with the girls to the club that night, come back. He had tried to call the cops, tried to say I stole his car, and cops kind of laughed because it was like, you drove the car there, you idiot. I'm like, you left it there. I'm like, I didn't steal your car. You left the keys there because you were so drunk. And then, yeah, I went and stayed at a friend's, and then he had went home at one point, and I was on the phone with my oldest, and I was trying to figure out how to get them out, all of that. And then he ended up like passing out or whatever, so I was able to come and grab the kids. And then the cop said, though, when I do come, to make sure, come with witnesses, all of that. And so I came with my friends just to grab the kids and just grab a few things and that. And in front of them, he came running at me and he shoved me as hard as he could. And I went flying in the air in our yard, all of that, called the police. He was arrested, and then I charged him for assault. And then I had put a restraining order, everything against him. And then, yeah, that's when I left the final time.
And this was still in Medicine Hat?
Yes.
And then you left to a different place in Medicine Hat, or did you go home to PA?
No, I stayed in Medicine Hat. I stayed with a friend for a little bit till I found a duplex. And then I had found a duplex, and I had moved in there November 1st. And I was all excited to start my life all over, right? I had found out from somebody, he was at work, all of this. I can't really remember, whatever. And we had come during that time. There was me and I don't know how many friends. We packed up. I've never been moved so fast in my life. Like, we knew he wasn't around, right? So we came in, grabbed everything, because the house he was in, we both owned, right? So I still had legal rights to the house and, all of that. I took whatever I had bought in the relationship, and anything he bought, I left. And then I just packed up whatever. And yeah, when we moved into that duplex, and I was about to start my life over.
How were the kids at this point? How did they feel? Were they excited too, or were they like, "What?"
Oh, they were the kids were very, like, the boys didn't really know him a whole lot because he worked in the oil industry. He'd be gone for 2 weeks, home for only a week. And when he was home, he was always out drinking. So it's not like he was very involved with them per se, like the boys. And when he was around, right, we would get into our fights and and just the way he was, like, they just didn't have that closeness with him because of
what a dick he was.
Yeah.
And so I'm assuming, because it sounds like most people that are like him, they don't take someone leaving them very easily.
No. Like, he had, so when I had left him, he had gone to his friend's house, and he called Shaw Cable, and he had found my address out from Shaw Cable because we were still legally married. Shaw Cable was like, because I don't know what he did. His friend's the one that told me after that he had went there, and that he's like, he's like, I know where he found the address from. And he's like, so he had wrote it down, whatever. And he had a guy that moved in with him who just got out of jail for assaulting his child. This is kind of, so he had this guy who was staying with him, and I knew he was heavy into drugs, alcohol, all of that. And so I was like, I am not letting my kids, I knew there was no court, anything in place yet. No, I didn't have full custody, none of that, right? And I knew legally he had rights, but I was like, I was not allowing my kids near any of that, right? I was like, I mean, I would have up and ran away to protect him from that, because I was like, nope, that guy just got it. I know what happened. I know the whole story, like what happened with his friend that was with him drinking. And so they had followed me outside of my workplace, and I had a restraining order against him. And the night before, he had called me 8 times, back to back to back to back, kept calling. And I didn't answer the phone because I would have breached the restraining order. Right. And I was like, and because I was done, I didn't want anything to go against me, right, in the courts, any of that. So I wanted to protect myself and make sure I was doing everything legal so I could try to win custody of the kids. So anyways, him and this guy were sitting outside my workplace. And well, first, me and my buddy Richard were leaving work because we were done at the same time. And this is where the house that we had the party at, him and his girlfriends. So we're leaving and all that. And then he was like, he kind of hit me on the side. He's like, oh my God, he's like, he's right over there. And so him and this other guy, this Todd guy, were sitting out my workplace watching us. We weren't 100% sure, but I told my buddy, I'm like, drive past and see if it's him. So he was like, okay, because we knew how his car looked. So he drove past, and then back then he didn't have a cell phone. So he ran to the nearest payphone, and he was like, yeah, he's like, him and Todd ducked real quick, trying to hide, right? And I said, yeah. And I was like, I had a cell phone, and I was like, yeah. So I went to the daycare to pick up our youngest, or boys. Went to the daycare, grabbed the kids, and he followed me right all the way from there. And I knew he was tailgated. He was following me. So I went straight to the police station, and I asked the police for help. And I showed up there, all that, and they took my statements, all that. I showed them how he had called me the night before, which was in breach of his, like that. Then they went, and that day went whatever. They found him and this Todd guy at a bar, because after he saw me pull into the police station, he took off, right? They found him at the bar, whatever, and all that. And the cops end up calling me, and they're like, all he wants to do is see his children, and you have no legal right to withhold his children from him. And, giving me heck on the phone, the cops were. And I was like, I understand the rights, all of that, but I was like, he's under the influence. I'm like, he's just got a convicted guy who just got out of jail for assaulting his child. I'm like, I'm not leaving my kids with anybody like that. I'm like, say whatever you want. I'm like, I know the laws, all of that, but I'm like, no way in hell am I doing that to my kids. But I was done. Like, I had been done for a year, right, with him. I was, like I said, and I was on a dating site, right? But I was telling this one friend this friend, that was her ex-husband that was staying with him. So they were calling her, and they were like, just, what's Giselle doing? And I told her, I said, just tell him I've moved on. I'm like, that I'm done, whatever. I said, come up with a story just to get rid of him. I'm like, I don't want to have anything to do with him. I'm done. I'm like, I hate him. I'm like, I'm not in love with him anymore. And I'm like, and she knew the extent of what he had done to me. So she was like, whatever. And then she told him how I was going on a date that night. And and I did, right? I was like, yeah, I was moving on, trying to get on with my life, right? This was November 3rd. She had told him all of this, right? Told him everything. Yeah, Giselle's dating. She's whatever. She's trying to move on, like, you need to move on too, kind of, and blah, blah, blah.
And he took it well and said, okay.
No, because she said, yeah, I don't really know the whole story. Like, he started calling my family and telling them I had been cheating on him for years. And, like, he called my mom and my brother, all of them, saying, like, he loves them, and, and I broke his heart, and I've been messing around on him. And my mom's like, you've been messing around on my daughter for years. Like, this is why you guys are even in medicine hat to begin with. Right. But he was playing the victim role. Right. So he was going around calling everybody, she had been cheating on me with this one guy for, and whatever. I didn't really care what he said about me, because I'm like, I was done. Right. I was like, say whatever. I know what happened in our marriage. I put up with your garbage for 12 and a half years. And because I'm done, he knew I was done. And he then, because he already had my address and all that, he was drinking with this Todd guy and that. And then he told this Todd guy he's going to go and F his wife. And then the Todd guy punched him out at the bar.
Wait. Then, so the buddy he had living with him, he turned to him and said, I'm going to fuck your wife.
Yes. Yeah. And I only know all this from the police reports, and then what the police had come to me and told me kind of after the investigation. So then he had went to the girl's house, all of that. And I don't really know what happened, any of that. And then he had come to my place, and this is because they were following, like, the cops had followed his phone, and this is what happened. So I had my girlfriend staying with me. So my oldest was in bed with me. My oldest daughter was, at the time, was 10. She was in bed with me. My boys were in the room next door. And then my girlfriend had 2 boys too. So they were twin boys. They were sleeping in the room right next door to us. My friend's girls so she had 3 girls too. They were sleeping in the family room downstairs, and she was sleeping in my oldest bedroom downstairs. Just because I was scared. I wasn't feeling safe, any of that, right? Because I knew he was stalking me. The middle of the night, that night, November 3rd, so it would have been November 4th. I think it was approximately 2 a.m. in the morning. He had broke in through the basement window. He walked right in through the basement window, walked past her 3 kids, came upstairs, went into my kitchen, grabbed one of the knives from my kitchen. And then I woke up to him standing at the end of the door, and he with a big knife, and he looked at me and he's like, I'm going to kill you, and then I'm going to kill myself. And then he flicked the light on and came flying in there. And then he jumped on me and just started, like, he was beating and stabbing me. Right. But I was strong enough I held him back with my arms with the knife. And I just kept, because he got me a few times. Right. But I was good enough or strong enough to fight that, but he just kept punching me with the other side and that. And then because he was kind of losing his balance, and then my oldest daughter had jumped on him, trying to get him off of me. And she's like, "Get off, Dad, get off, Mom, get off." And he wouldn't listen. My girlfriend, she's like, she was downstairs. She could hear everybody hollering, all that. She's trying to get out of bed and trying to find out what's going on, right? And thank God the boys never came out of the room. So he was beating on me and stabbing me. And then he, at some point, because I don't really remember like the whole how it happened, but at some point he got off the bed and he grabbed my legs and he threw me to the floor, and then it knocked me out. And then he jumped on me, but then he flipped the knife around, and then he used that for his fist. And then he started beating me with just punch, and calling me a whore, calling me this. And I've been screwing around on him for years, and, you stupid slut, and blah, blah, blah. And just going to town on me. Right.
And your daughter's in the room
with me. And she had went running to go call 911 at one point. And my girlfriend said she had come upstairs. I wasn't moving at one point, so she thought I was gone already. So she was going to grab the kids and run because she wasn't sure if he was out, if he was going to kill the kids next, any of that, right? And then she says, all of a sudden, she's like, she heard me say, "Please don't kill me. I still love you." And I remember, I kind of coming to, like I said, to this day, I said, I cannot explain what happened to me, any of that, right? I said, I just remember this really overwhelming feeling of, because I wanted to give up, right? And that I can't. It's not my time, right? I got to keep fighting. I'm like, I've got kids to fight for here. And then I remember all of a sudden begging him, whatever. And then my girlfriend had come behind because he was wearing a hoodie, come behind, grabbed him by the hood and yanked him off of me. And I mean, and she was just a 4 foot something girl, right? Like he was about 5'10", 5'11", and she got him off of me. I ended up standing up at one point, then he stood up at one point, and then he was holding the knife still, and I went and hugged him, and I was begging him, to not kill me, that we can work through this, we can get back together. I mean, I was trying to tell him what he wanted to hear, right?
Mm-hmm,
I didn't want to die, right? And he's like, "Oh my God, what did I just do?" Because, I mean, I was bleeding everywhere. My face was, you can't even explain how I looked. It looked like, something from the movies, right? Unrealistic. And he went to the kitchen, realized he had cut himself. He's like, "Oh, I cut myself." And then whatever. And then my girlfriend hollered at me, "Run." So I ran down the stairs, ran in, kind of went in through the window that he had broke in through. And I stood between there and the basement window, stood between there, just not sure if he's going to come back, try to get me again, or if he's going to take off. And then she was like, "Get the hell out of here." My friend's hollering at him, "Just go, blah, blah. And he's like, "I'm going to go kill myself." And she's like, "Do what you got to do. Get the hell out of here. We don't want you here. Go," and she was just hollering at him and that. And then he left, and my girlfriend's like, "Giselle," and then I kind of came out and all that. And then I got to the middle of the hallway. And then once I realized, so he had left, she slammed the door, locked it. And that, look, there was my daughter was still on the phone with 911. And then all of a sudden I could feel the pain, right? I went from like feeling almost nothing to, and then I looked at, like I said, I think my arm's broken. And then she was like, and I'm like, "I can't look." And then she had a look, and then she's like, "Don't look." And then she's like, "Well, I'm going to get a towel." And then, I mean, this is kind of our entertainment of, we're both single moms, right? So she goes, grabs one of my new towels, comes back. She's like, "Oh my God, it's a brand new towel." She's like, "I got to get the old one." She's like, "Well, wreck it." And so she runs back, grabs it. Single parents were more worried about wrecking a new towel than, than bandaging me up. And and no, I was just, because I was stabbed to the bone. So that's why I thought it was broken, right? But it was just, it was just cut so bad and hit the bone with the knife. And
so did he eventually, was he charged with attempted murder or anything?
So he had come back to our house that we had owned at the time and went to the garage, and he hung himself.
Oh.
But the cops had come in with a warrant, all of that, to arrest him for attempted murder. And they found him in the garage hanging, and they resuscitated him. And by the time they got to him, all of that, and they resuscitated him, brought him all back, they end up, he was brain dead, but he ended up so when I just remember being in the hospital, all of that, and I had cops surrounding me to protect me, right, until they could figure out what happened with him. And then all of a sudden a detective had come in at some point and said that he's been found. And I'm like, okay. And they're like, he hung himself and, and their tests right now and all of that. So they didn't leave until after, but then after they were like, he's brain dead and all that. And then I was like, okay. So yeah, they had him on like a ventilator, all of that. And then they kind of like, well, what do you want to do? Because legally, I was still his wife, and I was like, I don't want any rights. I'm like, let his family choose what to do, all of that. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I was 12 and a half years I was with this man, right? And I'm like, I remember my girlfriend bringing me down because I was in a wheelchair and that I couldn't walk still. And I was just, I was in this sling thing. I was, just in bad shape myself, right? And all of a sudden I'm seeing a person that you loved for all this time dying, right? And so, I mean, at some points I had crawled in the bed with him and I had, I had so much mixed emotions over it all, right? I mean, I'm sure to this day, a lot of the nurses were like, what the hell is she thinking, right? Like, just this man does this to you and you're crying because he's dying, right? And, at the time I was like, oh my God, now I got to say goodbye. I got to, this is the father to my children and,
Yeah,
a lot of mixed things going through me, right?
Sure, yeah. I mean, you had a huge history together. Not just there was good as well. I mean,
Yes. Oh,
not
for
that
sure.
not saying that yeah. Oh God, yeah. I can only imagine how confusing and mixed feelings it would be. Yeah.
Yeah, November 3rd, and I believe he passed away November 7th. I believe that's the day because the parents had pulled the plug and all that, right? And just let him go naturally. And then, yeah, and then his body had shut down, all that. But then I'm pretty sure that was the day he passed away. And then after that, I went from to hate for a long time. I hated him, right? I'm like, grief to hate. Like, how could you do this? I'm like, I almost couldn't raise my children. But I was like, I had a lot of people were like, well, why did you, do so well? And I'm like, honestly, it's when you're that close to death and you're alive and you get this, and I says, and my love for my children was everything to me. My kids have always been my number one. The fact that I get to raise them and I get to be there for them is what kept me going.
How long ago was that incident?
They're going to be 14 years.
Okay.
Yeah, 14 years ago this year.
And so how did you manage mentally and emotionally after that? I'm assuming you had to talk to therapists and counselors, and it mustn't have been easy. Like, I see you're remarried now, or at least, yeah,
Yes.
you're living with someone again. And
yeah, I went to counseling after. I went to like some heavy duty counseling, all of that. And, they make you relive the trauma. Like, it took quite a few years of, I still have things that can trigger me, right? Like PTSD doesn't just always go away, right? But I mean, I've learned how to cope through it all of that. And I mean, and trying to deal with the aftermath of what happened, all that. Like I said, thank God my boys they didn't come out. They didn't see, like my youngest and my oldest don't really, my two boys don't really remember. It's just my oldest. They're the ones that they've been very psychologically affected, very, very affected by it. Yeah, it's an ongoing, like continuous, trying to help them. And I mean, them even trying to find themselves and, just trying to find things to help them because I'm not sure, if I mean, he obviously was unwell himself, right? Like, yes, he was an alcoholic, all of that. He was mentally unstable himself to be like that, and I'm like, if there was anything carried on to, our oldest, because our oldest will be 25 this year, so I'm like, so that's an ongoing thing of just trying to help them out. Like I said, with the boys, they were only 3 and 4, so they don't remember a lot.
so how is your oldest daughter now? Like, I'm assuming she had to do some counseling and stuff too.
So at the time they did quite well. We did some counseling, some heavy duty counseling. I put them through everything that, that I could put them through to try to help them up until they were 18. I put them through a lot of counseling. I mean, there's been some, awful things too, right? Like where, they're even trying to find themselves, trying to help themselves, all of that. Like, because now that they are older, lots of things I can't do for them anymore, that they have to now do themselves because of them being an adult, right? But it's an ongoing struggle with them. They still to this day, they're very, very mentally have some mentally unstable things going on with them. And I just try to be supportive. And I mean, don't get me wrong, when everything happened too, I spoiled them. I didn't really, parent as I have with the boys, right? Like I was, because of what they witnessed, because of what they saw. So, I mean, my way of dealing with it was giving them whatever they wanted, so even stuff like that is affected to this day, right? Like,
I could see the emotion in your face, and as your daughter, she's struggling today with something.
yeah, yeah. Like, I mean, they're now like, well, they're now trans, so, that, and kind of like we are seeing us, like they are now finally seeing a psychiatrist, all of that. And I mean, at one point they didn't talk to me for almost a year because, I had called them out on some stuff, right? And they were mad at me over it. And they have a partner, and their partner said that we're not allowed to contact, we're no good for their mental health, so all of this. So, for almost a year, they didn't talk to me, all of that. And I respected, right, to stay away, let them, come when they come. I've always been supportive. I've always loved my children. I'm like, you'll come back when you're ready, and they did, right? They messaged me one day and came back. We message almost daily now, but I'm trying to help them, trying to, find different things, to find a diagnosis for them, trying to, heal them too, because, this many years, it still just affects everybody differently, right? And
So
and
now
they
the
struggle.
generational trauma continues,
Yeah.
unfortunately. Whether,
Yes.
I mean, and sometimes there's nothing you can do as much as you want to protect them and care for them.
Yeah.
The trauma just, it's almost like embedded in our DNA sometimes.
Yeah.
Is your oldest drinking? Do they have addiction issues or anything?
They had like drank there for a bit. They said they were an alcoholic at one point, to the extent I don't know, right? Like I know they smoke a lot of weed, to help them cope. I think just, like that. And, I'm not too sure of, the drinking they stopped, but a lot of weed.
They're on their own journey now, and they have to
Yeah.
find their own way. So I have an 18-year-old, moved out of the house not too long ago, and it's not easy. It's not easy being a parent.
Oh, no.
Did you have like guilt issues and things?
I blamed myself for everything. It took me years to forgive myself even. And I still, like, and that's why, like when my oldest, when they were young, right, and everything happened, if they wanted something, they got it. They want, like, and I never really disciplined them, right? Like nothing to the extent with our boys. Our boys, right from get go, I'm like, you guys are doing chores. You're doing that, you're going to learn to everything you get, you got to work for, and my oldest, I just gave, because there was so much guilt there for myself to, what I put that child through, right? Because they experienced way more than the boys did. And I just felt bad for not being strong enough to leave.
Have you ever gone to counseling together, you and your oldest?
No, we haven't. Like, now it's kind of like, because they're with a psychiatrist, and psychiatrist wants to speak with me too. So I'm kind of like, see what they're going to ask, anything like that. Because, I think it would be beneficial, right, to discuss things together and maybe kind of see my point of why I've done what I've done. And
Yeah, it would be beneficial, I think, if you and your oldest, because I mean, you try to do the best you can on your own. And it seems like you both love each other very much, and you've both been through hell.
and I mean, when we weren't talking to, people put stuff in their head and, all of that. And, and I'm like, and I've never been mean to my oldest. I've always been supportive, and I'm like, when they need mommy came running every single time, right? Like no matter what. And, and I still am like that to this day. I'll never change. I can't stop being that person. And, my kids are my world. And then now my husband, he's an amazing man, so I'm very blessed to be where I'm at, and the fact that the boys, because they were not really exposed to it the way they were, right? So the boys have come up, very, very well. Like, my oldest, or the middle boy, the one that was a mama's boy, is 18 years old now, and he's um he's in school right now taking criminal justice in college. So he actually wants to be a cop because he wants to help people, and he kind of knows my story, and he knows some of the stuff I've gone through, and the racism I've put up with too, because I have had cops mistreat me because I'm not white, right? And so when he knows, they all know what happened. Our youngest, 16, he'll be 17 in October, and he's in grade 12 now, and he's on his career path is mechanics, and so he's hoping to be a heavy duty mechanic, and that's kind of his goals. And I'm very, very lucky with how respectful they are of me. Like they just, and I think that, they're like, they can't imagine a life without their mom, right? I'm like, because I'm very, very close with them too. But I have different bonds with all three kids. And
do you have stepchildren now with your new husband? Or?
I do. Yeah. I got a stepdaughter. She's 19. She was just down this summer. She actually lives in Germany with her mom. And she came down this summer for a few weeks. So she's a sweetheart. I sure enjoy having her around. I just adore her too. And we still talk all the time. And yeah, she's been a blessing. I'm like, it's been nice because when I first met my husband, she was young, and all of a sudden had this little girl. I got to do her hair and do all the girly stuff, right?
It's that time for that Somebody Special, a segment where we chat about who cooperated in your mental health journey and helped fill your emotional tank, brought to you by Co-op.
My best friend, Crystal Johnson. Yeah, because, yes, my husband now, but back then I didn't know him, right? But she's helped me through so much. Like, when I would fight with him, when I would ever, and then up until now, right? Like she's been my rock. She's been my rock, and she still lives back where I met my ex-husband, that area, Atwater area. And, and to this day, because we had our oldest together, 20, maybe 25 years later, we still talk weekly. We still, she's been amazing for me and supportive because of what I've been through. Right. And then some of the stuff that has happened even after with the family, his family side, right, of stuff I've gone through with what they've done to me too.
No. So there's more. So after he was gone, it wasn't over. They were.
No, not all, right? I can't say all because, just speaking, but a family member had wrote on social media right at one point that he died trying to protect his children from me just because I pushed out a kid, and I mean, I still have the screenshot of what was said. Because another man was talking about suicide and, not living. And she was like, don't do it. Yeah, he had died trying to protect his children from me just because I pushed out the kids. I used my kids as leverage. Another comment was, a dirty Indian killed him. I didn't kill him. I'm like, he did it himself and he made those choices himself. Right. And they do a mental health walk for him, all of that. So, I mean, the town he grew up in, that part really can be upsetting. I understand the whole mental health walk for him, all of that I do, but they make it out like as if he's a hero. Right. And I've heard, this is whatever I've heard, that his picture's on the fire truck of the small town he had grown up in, and I'm like, it's sad because, I'm like, yes, was he mentally unstable? Yes, I can agree with all of that. But I'm like, but he was no hero. You can't sit there and say when somebody, even a mother, myself being a mother, if my son did that or my brother I could never try to make it out to be what I feel they have done. Right. Like what has happened. It's sad.
It's complex, isn't it? It's like from the outside looking in. Yeah. He was a mentally ill person who took their life. All the horrible things he did, you could blame on addiction or mental illness because maybe he was undiagnosed with something. And but yeah, all the pain he caused with it. And if another woman was in your situation, there's all these red flags. There's abuse happening. What would you say?
Honestly, if you see a red flag, be very careful, very cautious. Because one red flag can lead to two red flags and then so forth, right? And I'm like, leave soon. Do not, sit there and he'll change because, I tried everything to make him change. Like we did do the counseling. We did do, everything that I thought could try help. We moved from one town to another town, right? Thinking then, like that. And I tell you, if they're love bombing you and buying, like, I mean, geez, at one point I tried to leave him and, he come back with a fancy expensive ring and, like trying to buy my love then at the end, right? It was like, because I was trying to leave and I never did go back. I just, the games again, like he was saying he was dying, all of that. And well, I was like, okay, well, I'll come back, all of that. But I'm like, don't stay, get out. Like, there's so much better out there. If I had to choose being single or being with an abusive man, I would, when I was single, and yes, I met a wonderful husband, but when I was, that was the happiest I had ever been during that time, because I felt free for the first time in my life. I mean, don't get me wrong, I didn't have any more of being stalked. I didn't have any more of that because he passed, right? So I mean, I was, a little more fortunate that way, like to move past. But I'm like, I definitely healed faster because I didn't have to deal with any of that, right? Like, but I also would say, it's not worth it. Don't stay. Like, you know what? Everything they tell you is there's a reason. It's probably because you're beautiful. People do love you. People do care. And, don't allow them to make you feel that way. Don't make them, make you feel less of a human being because you're strong enough. And any woman that says they're not, then that's an excuse. Because you are, every woman is strong enough to get out. And financial reasons, I had 3 kids and I did it. And, and I'm like, when I met my husband, I was financially stable because I had 3 kids. I did not have no $1 million people. I was working a lot, but, I did it.
Thank you so much, Giselle. I can only imagine that story is very difficult to tell, and I appreciate that you're telling it so that others can learn from it, be inspired from it. So thank you again so much. Before we go, I just want to say thank you to Alana Boyle for hosting and creating the event Let's Get Loud. That was in Regina, Saskatchewan last night, and I got to network and hug so many people that I have either interviewed and not met face-to-face, or just, people in your little Instagram bubble that you've never actually got to meet before. So that was amazing. And there were some really fantastic speakers, one of which was Dr. Jody Carrington. She was on an episode a little while back. So yes, thanks again, Alana. I appreciate all the work you put into that. Keep listening, keep coming back. I have more and more amazing guests lined up, some already recorded. I'm hoping to have a second episode per week soon with a special co-host. And these episodes are going to be coming up on YouTube real soon. I'm still learning how to use the video and stuff like that properly, or better anyway. So a little patience. Some of the episodes aren't 100% great production looking style. Well, a lot of them are old. And I never had any intentions actually of ever putting them up on YouTube, but I have the video, so why not? But anyway, I'm excited that there's some cool stuff on the horizon for the podcast. So tell people about it. And please remember to make your beds and take your meds. Bye.